Okay, Dr. Lexa, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm ready to start if you want to bring the music down. Well, I want to welcome everyone this evening to what's really a premier event and literally the first time that we have done this. But welcome to the West Coast Kickstarter. And this is a sampler of a larger program that we have been doing for several years in Silver Spring related to the ARP. And we are thrilled to be working with the CRS today on this. And we're thrilled to be part of this partnership and to work with such a great partner. And this is really the first time we've done this. And I want to do a huge, really give huge thanks, huge shout out to Doctors Liu and Harwin and to Mr. Ackerman for all the hard work that went into doing this and to bringing us all together tonight. And this is part of what we are going to be doing in the future with working with other chapters. So I know if you're like most of the people I went to medical school with, you're probably going to try to stay in California. But if you happen to leave California, that's a mistake. Don't do it. I did it and I still regret it. By all means, we're going to try to be in other states and other state chapters as well in the future, doing programs like this as part of our co-production model. And I want to, again, thank you all for doing this and also thank all the faculty. Everybody who does this is a volunteer and everybody's volunteered their time to present to you today. So just a huge thanks to everybody who's worked on this. That's all I'm going to say for now, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Liu and he's going to talk to you about the agenda and introduce everyone who's working today as faculty. So thank you all again very much.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lexa, for that generous introduction. We're very thrilled to have this program for you all for both diagnostic radiology and radiation oncology residents. So our agenda pretty much will be starting at around 5:10. We'll have an all faculty QA forum. Hopefully you all had a chance to watch the videos that were provided for you after your registration and then be able to have an opportunity to ask the faculty questions about what they had mentioned. Then we'll have breakout sessions with the various faculty. So we'll go through the mock interview process. And then we'll reconvene after that for thank yous and closing remarks. Let me go and introduce some of the faculty that are here with us today. We're very honored to have Dr. Jason Cord, who's a radiologist at the Kaiser Permanente Anaheim and Irvine Medical Centers in Orange County. He previously served in the Navy and chaired the Naval Medicine's imaging segment of the Breast Healthcare Initiative, where he oversaw international multidisciplinary breast screening. He's also the current president of the Orange County Medical Association and also is the new treasurer of the California Radiological Society. So this guy has been in military, private practice, and integrated practice. So definitely we'll have a lot to share. Thank you for being with us. We also have Dr. Steve Holtzman, who is a partner and former lead of Radiology Associates in beautiful Central Coastal California. Got his training at Dartmouth Medical School and basically helped his company using lean transformation to achieve a national reputation for operational excellence that was actually featured in the ACR bulletin. He has served as past president of the California Radiological Society, and the San Luis Obispo County Medical Society voted him as Physician of the Year in 2019. Next, we have Dr. Yi Li, who is an academic neuroradiologist at UCSF in San Francisco. She's also the Associate Fellowship Director for the Neuroradiology Fellowship, and she completed her residency and neuroradiology fellowship at UCSF, and definitely has a lot of good points to offer in terms of what to look for in an academic practice. We also are honored to have Dr. Lawrence Muroff, who's the immediate past CEO and president of Imaging Consultants. He's also a clinical professor of radiology at the University of Florida and at the University of South Florida colleges. He also graduated from Dartmouth and Harvard Medical School and was an AOA member as well, speaking to his academic prowess. He's also received the gold medal from the Florida Radiological Society and the ACR. And he's also an inaugural member of the board of both the ACR's Radiology Leadership Institute, which made this program possible, as well as the Neiman Health Policy Institute. We're also honored to have Dr. Scott Truar, who's been in private practice for 17 years. He's been the president of his hospital medical staff and his radiology group, and has served in lots of national positions within the ACR. Most notably, what I remember him as being the past chair of the ACR's College Nominating Committee. He's also currently president-elect of his state medical society and is also especially trained in financial advising, and had hopefully you all got to see his video on that with some very helpful recommendations. We then have Dr. Jason Sinner, who graduated from Finch University, now known as Rosalind Franklin University, Chicago Medical School in Chicago. He did his MRI fellowship in my system, the Providence St. Joseph Medical System in Burbank, California, and is also the current president of Imaging Specialists in Pasadena, which is a Valley Diagnostic Imaging Facility. His specialties include MRI breast, prostate, cardiac, as well as musculoskeletal and neurological MR imaging. We also have Erica Kinney, who was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. She got her medical degree from Loma Linda, also here in California, and stayed there for her radiology residency. She did her fellowship in musculoskeletal radiology at UCSD in San Diego and returned to Loma Linda as faculty. And after holding a position of associate program director, she is now the program director for the diagnostic radiology program at Loma Linda. And I see that she also enjoys mountain biking, which is a passion of myself and Dr. Holtzman as well. I'm also honored to have Dr. Hina Syed, who is a fellow radiation oncologist at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And she also completed her medical education at Rosalind Franklin University and her residency in radiation oncology at Medical College of Wisconsin. She's also the education chair of the American College of Radiology's Council of Affiliated Regional Radiation Oncology Societies. And not listed, I also wanted to put a shout out to Dr. Julie Bykowski, faculty at UCSD in San Diego, serves on the executive committee of the California Radiological Society and co-chairs the Diversity and Inclusion Committee within the CRS, and served with me as a fellow past college nominating committee member in the ACR. So with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Joelle Harwin, who worked with me to make this program possible. And Dr. Harwin is also a graduate of Rosalind Franklin University. She is a radiology resident at UCSF and incoming chief resident for that program. She's currently the president of the California Radiological Society Resident and Fellows section. So happy to have her leadership with our society. So at this point, I will turn the floor over to Dr. Harwin.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Joelle Harwin. Thank you so much for the introductions. At this point, we will be starting our Q&A section. So I'm going to cue the faculty to please turn on their cameras. And while the faculty is turning their cameras on, I want to quickly update everyone that the CRS Resident and Fellows section is going to be holding elections for the executive board later this month. So if you're interested, our email address will be provided in the post-webinar survey. So please look out for that. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to open up the floor to questions. Please feel free to use the chat box to enter any questions that you may have. And it doesn't look like there are any at this time. So we're going to start with a few questions that came in earlier on the Google document that was sent out. So the first one we'll start with is very general, but when do you recommend starting to look for jobs and what is the best way to do so?
I'll take that one. Every day is a job interview, and don't forget that. You'll realize this, and you see people nodding in the background. I trained at UCSD and I stayed, but I'm a neuroradiologist. I'm academic, but I actually started faculty doing breast imaging because while I was doing my fellowship, I was looking for jobs, and everybody wanted someone who could do mammo. And I liked procedures, and I liked doing mammo, and I liked having the feedback. And so I started as mammo faculty and then progressively took on more neuro as some people were retiring. So I think you have to realize that every day you're on the job, you're working with your technologists, your team, your colleagues, and those are the people who are going to open doors for you and potentially close doors for you. And you also have to realize that what the job is that you think you want may not be the job that's available there, but once you get your foot in the door, you can make the job the way you want it to be.
I think that one important thing that everybody should participate
I'll throw a little information out there.
is, I'm sorry, is networking. And I think that if you participate in the state chapter, in the ACR resident and fellow section, in your area, just meeting people, having them see you, I think that is a very important way to get a job down the road.
Oh, good. I was just gonna say I would echo everybody's sentiments on this. As a guy who's been in multiple practice modalities, most of the time one thing has led to another, and I can't agree more that every day on the job is a recommendation for the future, and somebody that you may well meet that later hooks you up with that dream opportunity. And the opportunities aren't only your jobs. I would actually say your research. It could be an opportunity in a county medical society. It could be an opportunity to serve on a GR committee. It could be an opportunity for an appointment of many different natures. So every day as a job interview could not be a better statement. I agree completely.
And I think to add on to that, sometimes with the way that kind of the electronic process works these days, it becomes a little less personal. My recommendation in terms of timeline would be to actually, like try to reach out, make a phone call, try to actually make a point of contact at the places that you might have some interest in, so you can already start developing, a relationship with somebody regardless of when it starts.
I would agree with everything that's been said. I think although the official sort of job application timeline starts around the fall of your fellowship here, in reality, if you already know what you want, it's never too early to start reaching out to practices that you're interested in, or to have your people from your institution, your mentors and your attendings to reach out on your behalf. So in that sense, it's really important every day to put your best foot forward, and also just to let people know what you want, because those around you are really invested in helping you to achieve what you want, and letting people know early what you're interested in will allow them to reach out on your behalf.
And I'll also add in too, that if you are interested in staying local to where you're training, it's worth asking around about moonlighting opportunities during your fellowship to the extent that your training allows it. I know lots of our trainees have gotten their foot in the door by doing moonlighting, and it is extra time, and you certainly don't want it to take away from your primary job, but it's a great way to get to know people, and they get to see your productivity and how you work with their colleagues and represent their groups. So don't turn those opportunities away.
Thank you so much. Very helpful answers. The next question, kind of similar, we talked about the electronic day and age. So what advice do you have for CV and resume preparation in terms of standing out?
Well, I think you have to understand, or at least come to the conclusion, that radiology is a service specialty, and you have to provide the appropriate service to the referring physicians, to the patients, and to the hospital administration, because those of us who are currently or had been in private practice understand the importance of relationships as a means of maximizing your chance for tenure and incumbency at your hospital. So relationships are key, and also the professionalism that you show when you interact with technologists, with file clerks, with everybody whose job is to make the patient's job more effective and informative and less frightening.
If I could just add something, one of the things, I've hired numerous radiologists as well as support staff. Depending on where you're coming from, if you're in the middle of Iowa, we don't have coasts or mountains, but we can provide a certain quality of life, and it's a good place to live. But if somebody is going to be applying to our practice, and I assume this is probably generalizable to most practices, if I don't already know you and have a sense of familiarity, if I haven't become familiar to you in the way that Doctors Sinner and Muroff have described, getting involved, getting your face out there, meeting people. If I don't know who you are, then I want your cover letter to explain your connection to my community, or why it might be that this person from a different state has picked my location to come interview. What I'm really looking for here is this person serious, and do they have a certain commitment or connection to something I'm offering? And so therefore I need to take it very seriously. Or is this a CV or a resume or a cover letter from somebody who's sending out 100 different ones? Because we don't want to waste our time or the other person's time. So in terms of standing out, if I don't already know you, if I haven't engaged in the behaviors to become familiar with you through the ACR or the State Medical Society, then I will want to know that right up front. Why are you choosing to come look at my practice?
I want to build on that, because I think that's a really important point. Like in my area, if somebody puts a cover letter and tells me that their recreational activities include surfing, mountain biking, fishing, there'll be a perfect fit here. This will be paradise for them. And so if they've done their research as to some of the high points of this area, I know that they're definitely looking at the uniqueness of this region. And I think that they'd definitely be a good fit, in addition to all the professional qualifications they would have for this job.
But Scott's point and his words, if I don't already know you, hark back to the fact that if he does know you, if he has met you through the state chapter or through the ACR, you have a leg up on somebody who is sending out a to whom it might concern type of letter. And that is where networking is key. And I don't think it can start early enough. The earlier you can start to network, the better off you are and the better advantage you have over the next person in a competitive job environment.
Yeah, which I would say is it's about motivation. If you've taken the time to become familiar with me, then I know you're motivated. And that's going to be a good fit, or have a much higher chance of being a good fit. And so that reduces the barriers that I have to hiring anybody if I have that familiarity in all the mechanisms that Dr. Muroff just said.
I think it's important to do your research on the group that you're hoping to join, to know what they're looking for and to try to customize your CV to try to highlight how you can best fit that practice. And so the example I can give in academics is that, for example, a job posting may say that they want an academic neuroradiologist, but if you inquire or if you have your mentors inquire on your behalf, you may realize that they're looking specifically for a head and neck radiologist and within the neuroradiology spectrum, or that they're looking for someone who's interested in quality improvement. And then you can really highlight those aspects on your CV and in your cover letter. And that way you'll really stand out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You guys actually kind of set us up for the next question that I wanted to touch on. We received a series of questions related especially to the workflow of private practice. So this is kind of a multiple part question, but to start it out, there was a lot of concern about what you're required to read, especially outside of your fellowship specialty. What kind of studies this includes, and what type of procedural work you should go in prepared to perform.
I can take a stab at that one. So I think every private practice, if it's private practice driven, is going to be a little bit different. And you just have to ask the question, what does this require? But as a new employer, when we hire somebody who's fresh out of training, we always know that there are going to be things that they're uncomfortable with. And we are more than willing to help train them, get them up to speed, help get them familiar with whatever. One of our assumptions that, we're very blessed here on the West Coast. We have some terrific training programs. So we know that everybody who comes out is going to be well-trained, well-educated, and can learn. So even if you don't have a skill, you can learn that skill. So one of the things that's important about a smaller private practice is that you're open-minded to the fact that you might learn different things. And I could say everybody on this faculty is, when they graduated, there weren't some things that we learned how to do later on. Like for me, it was, I didn't train in PET scanning. I had to learn PET scanning and on and on. So there are lots of skills that you can pick up, but as long as you have a good foundation, it's going to be fine. And I think everybody who's coming out of these West Coast programs are going to have that skill. And as far as volume goes, the other thing that we know is that new graduates, they're just not as fast, and that's okay. You know, at least for our practice, and I think it's probably true for everyone, is that, you know, we understand that if you're just coming out, you know, it's more important that you're learning and getting a little bit better all the time. If you come onto our practice and you're staying flat and you're not getting any better, that's going to be a red flag, and it might prevent you from becoming a partner. But if you are getting a little bit faster all the time, you're learning, you're asking questions, and what Dr. Muroff was saying, if you're interacting well with the faculty. So, you know, just the work that you do, we call that revenue generation, but equally important is revenue preservation. That's your relationship with the hospital administrators, your techs, your nurses, your colleagues, your ref docs, and that takes a year or two to kind of start to build a reputation. And I would say, you know, be humble when you start, and be inquisitive, and don't be offended if you come out of a top-notch program and you have this great fellowship, and then they ask somebody who's outside of your fellowship for their opinion because they've developed that reputation. Just don't be offended by it. Just be humble and realize that that's going to come with time.
I think one of the biggest problems is unmet expectation. Don't tell me or any other private practice person who is hiring that you can do X when you can't do X and you have no intention of doing X, and you know, it's a problem. Resolve those concerns up front, not necessarily on your first interview, probably better on your second, but make sure you are comfortable with what is expected of you. Make sure, if it is important in a private setting for you to practice your subspecialty area of expertise, get some idea of how much of that subspecialty expertise will be a part of what you are asked to do. And then I think the real key in establishing yourself as a valuable member is, how can you build a practice within your area of subspecialty expertise? In other words, in the early days of MRI, one of the things I did was develop a 6-county referral for MRI of the TMJ. It was a niche and it grew rapidly. It was lucrative to the practice. It was beneficial to the patients. And those types of things can be very valuable in establishing your presence within not only the practice, but the hospital and the medical community.
Thank you guys, so helpful. As a third year myself, that's very helpful, because coming out of residency and feeling like you need to read everything is very overwhelming. So the next question, again, kind of building on that, is, let's say a practice, it's your dream job, and a practice wants you to read maybe mammo, and you are not fellowship trained in that, but you're willing to learn. What's the best way to approach that with your practice? What do you recommend?
I would ask your practice, you know, if I'm not comfortable doing something, what kind of training program do you have internally? So the answer that we would give to that is, you know, we have a unified work list. Everybody shares cases. And if you are not comfortable with something, but you really want to learn it, why don't you just come in, read a bunch of cases, put them on hold, and then we'll double read them with you until you feel comfortable. So if you like that answer and you say, okay, well, this is a practice that I can grow with, because that's the thing. I mean, you're going to come out of your training program and you're going to be at a very high level. But 5 years from now, if you don't do anything, you're going to start to slide. So you always have, you know, this is a continuous learning environment. You have to continuously challenge yourself. and make sure that you're going to find a job that's going to support you as you grow over time.
I'll put a plug in there. The ACR has a series of different courses on weekends for breast. You can go get, your volume for MRI. There's other things like that. But I echo this. Nothing replaces the value of doing the work. You need the volume and you need the feedback. And, if you're not, as somebody who did it, if you're not familiar with breast, but you're going to do it as part of it, it's actually one of the better ones because you have direct feedback for what your calls are, which is not a luxury you necessarily have in a lot of other subspecialties. So if you are learning something and you're really trying to get into it, you have to put the time in to follow your path, and you got to follow your calls, and you got to put that extra effort in, and you need to check back with people who are experienced and say, hey, did I over or under call this? What would you have done? And it's part of the learning curve is you just got to put the time in and you've got to see the volume. There's a huge difference between your first 1,000 studies on something to 10,000 studies.
I'm going to oddly tie this back to Dr. Muroff's earlier comments about establishing exactly what it is you want out of a practice and then developing it for that practice so that it can be a lucrative part of it. I think you described in the question, the supposition is that this is your dream job, but technically it's not actually asking you to do what your dream work is, right? So in some ways, I'm presuming that there's extenuating factors that make this your dream job, like location, family, ties, some other reason that this is your dream job, because at the very beginning of the question suggests it's kind of not. You're not doing necessarily what you want to do, but you want to be a part of this practice. So I would argue that this is a great opportunity for growth. I echo everybody's opinion here that as an opportunity for growth, you want to run with it and you want to be in the best possible circumstances to grow and grow safely in that practice. But I would throw a second counter current under that and say, make sure that whatever the aspect is that you want out of this job, like Dr. Muroff mentioned earlier, that you develop as well, so that while you're reading those memos and you're doing the toll and you're doing all that, if your thing was cardiac, angiography by CT, that you make sure that you're also volunteering to work with your cardiologists and your other people in order to develop that program and the scanner protocols and things of that nature, so that you're establishing the reputation in what is truly your dream job later. There's nothing wrong with growing, and actually I appreciate the people that are blatantly honest with me and saying, I will do anything to stay here. I'm a chest radiologist, but I will read mammo because mammo is a part of the chest. But at the same time, my dream is to develop a wonderful cardiac program and an interstitial lung disease program with my pulmonologist. So please sign me up for every tumor board related to pulmonology while I'm reading those mammograms, so that I keep my dream alive at the same time. And anybody that comes to me and says something like that, I will make everything happen to make that pathway goes, because I know that is a motivated person who is going to bring something new to my practice and make it flourish. And I know that they're dedicated enough to the location, as Dr. Truar said earlier. That means that they're with me for some other reason, and they're willing to do whatever it is for that some other reason. But at the same time, they're pursuing their passion. They recognize that there's a dichotomy between the two of them. And that's a great applicant as far as I'm concerned. So I would just say, make sure you keep your eye on the ball while you're simultaneously following the dream.
I would like to tag on to what Jason just said. Jason, what you just said right there is just by itself is important, but the energy that you brought and the inspiration that you brought is really important. So when we're looking for somebody, one of the things that we're looking for is a high energy, kind of motivated person. And there's a great book called Winning by Jack Welch. He's somebody that you probably never heard of, but he used to run GE. When he talks about hiring winners, he talks about somebody who brings energy, and do you leave this conversation kind of motivated? What I just heard in Jason, I was like, I want to go. Let's work together, Jason. Let's do it. That's the kind of energy you want to leave an interview with. Everything that he said is absolutely true, but the energy that he brought, make sure that you're paying attention to that too, because that is what's going to put you to the top of the list.
And just to add one more thing on all the stuff I think that everybody's saying is great about this, but also I think it also comes back to how you really can't start like getting to know your practices early enough, because if there is that one thing where you're kind of, not sure of in terms of, like whether you're going to be able to help out with that in terms of the practice, and you don't want to be, kind of, unsure of yourself walking in, then you can actually spend some of your, elective time and or, time during fellowship actually like doing that kind of stuff as well, getting involved with that.
Wonderful. So we have an additional question that just came in. We have a few people that are logged on, as we know, that are undecided. It's hard to decide academics or private practice. And so the question is specifically, how can you basically maintain yourself as a good candidate for both private practice and academic practices? And I think this ties into an earlier question that we were discussing previously, which is how important is research in private practice?
I can take a swing at the academic end of it. So even within academics at UC San Diego, we have two different tracks. We have the Academic Senate, which are people who may have grants, are considered experts in their field, have a certain publication type of requirement with it. And we have the HS clinical track, where your promotion is based on being a clinician, your clinical service. If you're Academic Senate, your letters of reference are coming from peers who you may not work with, but they're determining your presence in the field. If you're in the HS clinical track, your letters of recommendation as you get promoted are coming from your colleagues outside of radiology within the hospital system, your customers essentially. And so there are different types of academic practice. There are certainly hybrid practices that some of you may have come through and trained, where it may be a private entity that has a trainee program in certain subspecialties. So there's a wide range of what does it mean to be an academic radiologist, and there's bleed into that from different areas. What you need to be honest with yourself is how much do you want to be doing independent research? Do you want to be running a lab? Is that the career trajectory you're on with a foot in clinical practice? Or are you somebody who wants to be doing the clinical volume and being an expert in your field and having maybe service opportunities or working with colleagues supporting their research, but not necessarily the front one up there? And I think it's hard to know necessarily when you're starting out which path you're on. Usually you'll figure that out within your first 4 to 6 years of practice. That's when the grants are available. That's when you start kind of figuring out what else is going on in your life and how narrow of a subspecialty or how broad you want to be. So if you are thinking that research is something that has an interest to you, whether you're a PhD or not, you should really try to see what it's like to get the grant and try to do something independent, or have your mentor carve out a piece of something for you. And you should be working on those publications, because if that's the path you want to go, you need to come out of fellowship showing that, or maybe think about the second year of fellowship if you want to be going for the K award. But that's not what all academics do.
Well, let me take a swing, and I'm sure others will jump in on private practice. First is, you've seen one private practice, you've seen one private practice. I mean, every practice is different, although the problems seem to be common to all of them. Now, having said that, I've seen many, many practices, probably well over 100, but unless your research centers around the joys of working extra nights and weekends, I don't think your private practice partners are going to be much impressed with what you do. If they are impressed, that's wonderful. But I would say that most practices that I've seen permit you to do research. I certainly did a lot. I came through the private practice situation, but it all had to be on my own time, and it couldn't be at the expense of maintaining and growing the practice and doing the things that were necessary for our practice to maintain its hospital contracts and to expand. I mean, I was an examiner for the ABR. That week was my week of vacation. Sat on the board of chancellors of the ACR. It's my week of vacation. Now, some practices are far more enlightened, and they will give you time to do those things, but that's not usually the main focus of a private practice situation.
I want to chime in here with 2 points. One, as a private practice person who hires people, if you have gone through your residency and you don't know what practice style you want, and maybe you've accumulated a lot of research, if you decide at the last minute that a private practice job is the one you want, it's fine for you to have all that research on there. If when I talk to you, I understand that represents drive and motivation and creativity and intelligence, that you will then import those qualities into my practice, even though you won't be doing, it'll be clear you're not doing any sort of research when you're with me. But if when I talk to you, you talk about the fascination of proton spectroscopy, if that's a thing, well, you're not going to fit, and I know that. So as long as you can help me understand how your prior interests fit my practice model job, then we're good. Then we'll be fine. That's not a problem. The other piece I would ever bring up is, if you are interested in being an academic, but you end up in a private practice job, or you want to try that, go ahead and do that and apply to be an adjunct professor at the local medical school or at your home, where you're coming from. I've been an adjunct professor for all but 2 years of my private practice. I teach medical school classes, but like Dr. Muroff said, all on my own time. But I'm fully able to maintain a teaching schedule, and I get all the joys of interacting with residents without being an academic. So that's kind of a hybrid I've created for myself.
And I also, if I can add one more thing, I think it's very important, like, if you do your homework and you know enough, you do your due diligence about the practice, and you actually decide to go and join whatever practice you're going to do, at that point, you've made that decision to kind of become part of that practice, as opposed to that practice molding around you, because that's very unlikely to happen, right? It's going to be more of you having to kind of mold into the practice itself, as opposed to the other way around.
I just want to share an
also like to-
experience I had when I
Go ahead.
was applying. When I first applied for my current job, the partner that hired me threw my CV in the trash because he said he thought I was too academic. Why would he want to come here to Northern California in a rural area? But a few days later, he fished my CV out of the trash and looked at it again and decided to give me a call. So it's not a liability for private practice to have done research. In fact, it can be a plus, being able to show that you're able to see things through and complete projects to their fruition. But I think a lot, just like Scott said, is what's your motivation, and can you definitely show that you are very interested in clinical practice, and what actually excites you. So after my partner, hit it off with me with our telephone conversation interview, this turned out to be a very good fit. Sorry, Julie.
I was also going to just put in there to have an honest conversation with the group about the financial structure, because some people may be more comfortable being an employee model versus a partner model, and understanding what does that mean for your career and your negotiations. I'm an academic, I'm in a hospital system, but I serve on our hospital-wide compensation committee. So just because you're an employee doesn't mean you don't have a role to play in those negotiations, that you would be forfeiting that because you're not in a partnership or a practice model. But it's something that I think we don't prepare people well for during their training to have those conversations, but it's something you should be thinking about for your decisions, your longevity and your happiness with your career as well.
I completely agree with everything that everyone has said. And I feel like most people I know coming out of fellowship, coming out of training, have applied to both types of jobs, academic and private practice. And I think it really comes down to how you explain your motivation, how you craft your resume and your cover letter for each particular job that you're applying to. So to make sure that it's customized to explain why you would be a good fit for that particular job.
Thank you so much. So unfortunately, we're out of time for our Q&A. Any questions that we weren't able to address are going to be collected and then they will be taken care of. You'll get a response via email. Thank you to all of our faculty. As a third-year radiology resident myself, I can say this was absolutely incredibly helpful. So thank you for dedicating your time. And now I'm going to turn this back over to Dr. Lexa.
Okay. I want to thank everybody. Again, great questions, tremendous discussion. You know, I think that I guess you're going to be recorded this and keep it in California, but this is just tremendous material. This is really good advice. And as somebody who's worked in more than one place in my own career, I think that this is very helpful advice for trying to get it right from the beginning. So again, thanks to all of you. I also want to say a special thanks, and I saved this for this session because I know I was trying to move quickly to get things started, but a special thanks also to our RLI team, and in particularly Jen Penda, who worked very hard on this, and Anne-Marie Pasco and her team. They've done a tremendous job here, and again, you know, this is a new project, and again, it's been a great partnership. So now what we're going to do is we're going to shift gears a bit, and we're going to do a simulation of an interview. And this is sort of we call this, you know, interviewing in a safe space. So you won't lose a job if you answer a question correctly. You can certainly pick our minds and ask us how we, you know, respond to what you said. And it's sort of like when I learned to fly an airplane, they put us in simulators and let us, you know, just fly safely in a simulator. And if you didn't crash the plane, they tell you to deliberately crash the plane just so that you get a feel for what it would look like just before you actually hit the ground. So, you know, if you do it perfectly, they actually say, well, no, let's try that again. You know, and I want you to feel what it feels like when the engine stops or whatever. And in a simulator, you can do that. And this is a safe space for doing that. You have people who've all are very experienced interviewers, lots of great life and career experience here. So please take advantage of that. We're going to have around 40 minutes for this, and I am going to turn it over to Jen and to her team to explain how we're going to get into the rooms, because I guarantee I'm not the most tech savvy person on this call today, and I want to make sure we get that right. So I'm turning it over. So thank you.
Happens magically through our tech support, Liz.
Hey everybody, so just stand by, we'll bring you in shortly. Just make sure you click breakout rooms. If you have any questions, you can alert the host in that breakout room, or you can click leave breakout to come back into the main room. Please don't click leave meeting or you'll have to come back into the whole meeting. So if you have any problems, just flag us down and we'll help you out. Stand by, please. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. Is that okay, ACR staff?
Yes, please.
All right, so I was kind of cut off there at the very end, but we were talking about interviewing, and I'm just going to close again by thanking everyone and just sort of running again through all the people. It really took a village to put this together, and we really appreciate it. So starting again with Jen, who quarterbacked this, and Anne-Marie and her team. Then again, thanking all of our faculty, tremendous job. And again, special thanks to Dr. Liu and Dr. Harwin for really helping to work on this. They really did a tremendous job. First times are always the most difficult. And one of the things that I want to encourage all of you to do is spread the word about this. Also, make sure you fill out the forms and tell us what you liked and didn't like. We really read them. We really pay attention to them because we really want to make it better the next time. But we hope that this helped. I will close by just, we put this through the chat, but I put a variation of this through a side chat that was going on. When I went to Wharton, one of the things that the professors would say, I later became a professor there, and I use this line as well, which is if you come into the room and the room's half empty because people were partying too much the night before and didn't make it into class, we just usually say, well, they're going to be working for you someday. So just keep that in mind. But thank you all for making the effort to attend. Again, just thank you to everyone, and thank you for all the work that was done. I really hope that we will do this in person in California because, as I said, I've lived a big chunk of my life in California and I always like coming back, and hope to do that as soon as that's safe. So thank you all again very much. And we look forward to meeting you in person in the real world when that's possible. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you,
Yes.
Frank. And on behalf of CRS, thank you all.
Yes.
Thanks, Johnson.
Thank you guys for joining us.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.